this is going to be a short video about testing post-infection and also testing before going back home or going back to work. First, testing post-exposure, or post-infection rather. Okay, well, no, I'll just cover all of it. So, when you get tested, you should be getting an administered test by a medical professional. Do not base your results off of a self-administered test. So, do not use CVS or Walgreens. Do not buy the ones at, Rite Aid or Walgreens or CVS and do it at home. While those can provide some peace of mind, you should not be basing your or anyone else's safety off of those. That's all I'm saying. Those are at best 30% accurate because it can, first of all, the method in which it's done, meaning you do it yourself, that can create problems in the specimen collection. So with self-administered tests, usually they tell you that you just have to, hardly go in, like maybe a quarter to 3/4 of an inch into your nose. They stress that it does not have to be far. That is not a good sample. So already the specimen that you're collecting is not going to be of the best quality. The gold standard is a PCR nasopharyngeal test. And the difference between rapid and PCR is that the PCR is run thoroughly through a lab. The rapid test is, you can usually get those results in 15 to 60 minutes. Now, as far as timing for the test, people say, well, if rapid tests aren't good, why are they available? Well, self-administered tests aren't very good, and they're available. It just is what it is, unfortunately. To be frank, it comes down to money and supply and demand, and impatience. That's what it comes down to. But when you have been infected and you've already tested positive, there are some times where people want to be tested again to make sure they don't test positive. Unfortunately, like I said in my last video, you can unfortunately test positive up to, like, I think 3 months afterward. At least you could before the vaccinations. So with the vaccinations, with the antibody infusion treatments, I'm not sure how likely that would be. Pardon me. It's already unlikely to test positive 3 months after testing positive the first time. Those cases are so rare, you don't really have to worry about them. But because it happens, that's why the CDC was saying that people who have been vaccinated or people who have been positive in the last 3 months don't need to be tested or quarantined for 3 months. That is not safe. It doesn't matter your vaccination status. It doesn't matter what your COVID status is or history is. While it may be less likely to contract COVID within 3 months of having it, while it might be unlikely to get COVID if you've been vaccinated, the chance is still there. So you should still treat it as though it is a risky situation, because it is. And I'm sorry that very well respected, medically and scientifically based organizations and people that you trust are telling you these things that are just frankly not the whole truth. They're giving you this information to work with, but when you're only given half of the information, you can't expect the best results. So, with that being said, when you get COVID, testing after having already been testing positive, when returning to work, like I said on my last video, some work locations require 2 negative tests before you return to work. What I recommend is getting your first post confirmed. So you test positive, wait 2 weeks, towards the very end of that 2 weeks, to get tested again, because you're less likely to test positive at that point when the viral load is going down and the virus that you're shedding is less. So with that being said, that would be when I would do the first post test, about 2 weeks after you tested positive the first time. Some people would say you can do it a little sooner than that, like 10 days after your symptoms. I'm sharing you what my recommendations are. Everyone's living situations are what they are. Some people have to get back to work sooner. Some people's employers don't care if you're positive or not. It's apparently a free-for-all, so you do what you have to do. I can't control what anyone else does. But my recommendation would be that you test the first time after you know that you have COVID. If you require a test to either go home or to go to work, don't do it for 2 weeks after you tested positive. Because if you test too soon and your viral load is still too high, you're going to test positive, and then you're going to have to wait even longer to get a negative test for the first time. So I'm trying to help you get back sooner, actually, by being just a little bit more patient. But again, everyone's situation, employer requirements, family situation, living situation, they're all different. And some people don't have the ability to wait that long. So, also, before you return to work, a lot of people say, do I have to test? That's up to your employer. Everyone has the right to test, but again, I wouldn't test until you've given your body the amount of time that it needs to actually get rid of most of the viral load that would be detectable by a test. Otherwise, if you get another positive because you've tested too soon, it's going to make everyone nervous, including yourself, and anxious. Just don't do that to yourself. Regarding the timing of the test when you are first exposed, let me share with you a little bit with that. This is very disorganized. I apologize. After you have a known exposure, if you get tested before the 5th day after exposure, you will, and this is how it was at the start of the pandemic. With the Delta variant, I'm not sure if the percentages are going to be the same, but generally speaking, and this is similar to any viral infection, as time goes on after exposure, the viral load builds, and then, excuse me, sometimes that results in symptoms, sometimes it does not. So with that being said, you're exposed. I would recommend doing as best you can to quarantine or isolate yourself from everyone for those 5 days. If you have the capability of doing a full quarantine for those 5 days, fantastic. Most people don't have that luxury. Most employers will not allow you to do so. Most people do not live in a situation where you can just leave the house, So do your best to limit the exposure to others during that time when the viral load would be building. And then on the 5th to 7th day after that known exposure, then that's when you get a test. As long as you wait the full 5 days, you can trust a PCR or a rapid test so long as it's done by a medical professional. If you take either of those tests early, the likelihood that they're going to be accurate is obviously down in accuracy. So the percentages that I was going to share with you with a PCR test, which is the gold standard, like I said, the first day of exposure, you're at virtually 0% of having an accurate test reading because it hasn't even registered in the body yet. By the full day one, you're usually at about 20% accuracy of a test result coming back. So when I would get calls saying, I was exposed yesterday, I need to go get a test today, I thought, oh dear, please don't do that. Because it's going to say negative, and you're going to assume that you're negative, and then 5 days later, you're going to be exposing everyone you come into contact with this. Please. Or even less than 5 days. So, again, do all that you can to wait that 5 to 7 days after exposure, and then either a rapid or a PCR test. They are equally sufficient, again, so long as they are done by a medical professional, not self-administered. And, again, I recommend the nasopharyngeal, the one that people talk about tickling your brain, going way back into your sinus cavity. It actually doesn't go up, it goes back and down a little bit. And it is not comfortable. It's like a flu swab. They're not comfortable, but it's a very minimal discomfort to make sure that you are keeping yourself and the people that you love and don't love safe. So, at any rate, that's those are my recommendations for testing post-exposure, post-infection, and before returning to work.